Do you remember those words? Those remarks from the US president created a diplomatic firestorm. Guess what? Joe Biden has done it yet again. He says if China attacks Taiwan, the US will come to the island's defense. Listen in.
But would US forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
So unlike Ukraine, to be clear, sir, US forces, US men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion?
Yes.
No ambiguity whatsoever. The US will come to Taiwan's defense. For those keeping account, Biden has now made the same commitment to defend Taiwan twice. And on both these occasions, the White House has rushed to clarify its remarks. But is anyone really buying those statements? More importantly, is Beijing convinced? We'll try and answer that. As Biden handed China another opportunity to challenge Taiwan militarily. In the next few minutes, we'll tell you about the fallout. We first begin with the latest. Biden's comments were part of an interview with an American broadcaster. Almost immediately after it came out, reporters reached out to the White House. They wanted a clarification. They wanted to know if the US policy had changed. The White House, however, stuck to the old script. The US policy has not changed, they said. Allow me to quote. The president has said this before, including in Tokyo earlier this year. He also made it quite clear that our Taiwan policy has not changed. That remains true. So what policy was the White House talking about? Strategic ambiguity. What is that all about? Let me explain now. For years, the US has walked a diplomatic tightrope over Taiwan. Americans shied away from choosing one side. To China, they promised to adhere to the One China policy. The policy that declares Taiwan is actually a part of China. The US signed on to this in the year 1979 when it snapped all formal ties with Taipei in favor of Beijing. But Washington never really abandoned Taiwan completely. It passed the Taiwan's Relations Act in the same year, that is 1979. It allowed the US to sell arms to the island. Another commitment was part of this law. It says the US will come to Taiwan's defense in case of an attack. But this clause is written rather ambiguously. It doesn't really specify how the US will defend Taiwan. Is the support limited to arms? Or is the US ready to send its soldiers to defend the island? That's what everybody wanted to know. Biden's comments put an end to that ambiguity today. He is ready for a military intervention if necessary. That's what he says. And China is furious. The clarifications from the White House have been ignored. Beijing registered a diplomatic protest today. Take a look.
The US remarks seriously violate the One China principle and the provisions of the 3 US joint communiques. They breach the US commitment to not support Taiwan independence and send a severely wrong signal to the separatist forces of Taiwanese independence. China strongly deplores and rejects it and has made solemn complaints with the US side.
That sounds like a threat. The Chinese military threatened Taiwan too by sending its warships and warplanes. Let me give you some figures. 9 Chinese aircraft and 5 Chinese vessels were today spotted near the island. But what were they doing there? Well, not much, just making their presence felt. These are what military experts call grey zone tactics. The Chinese military has perfected this approach. So what are these grey zone tactics? They are essentially coercive and provocative military moves. They stop short of an actual war, but these are good enough to keep someone on their toes. The Chinese military started these provocative visits last month. This was after Nancy Pelosi paid a visit to Taiwan. She is the Speaker of the US House of Representatives, the highest-ranking US official to visit Taiwan in more than 2 decades. Beijing saw this visit as an out-and-out provocation, a signal that the US is ready to support Taiwan with a military invasion. China doesn't rule out a military operation to take Taiwan by force. The frequent drills around the island serve as a reminder. They convey to Taiwan how quickly Chinese forces can mobilize and reach the islands. And it only gets worse from here on. China is now making reckless moves. It is using every available avenue to hit back at America. Just last week, Beijing announced a fresh round of sanctions. They target America's defense sector in particular.
The sale of arms to Taiwan by the United States seriously violates the One China principle and the three Sino-US joint communiques, especially the August 17th communique. It seriously damages China's sovereignty and security interests, Sino-US relations, and the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. China firmly opposes and strongly condemns it. In order to safeguard China's sovereignty and security interests, the Chinese government has decided to sanction those who are involved in the sale of weapons. Chairman and CEO of Raytheon Technologies, Gregory Hayes, and Boeing Defense President and CEO Ted Colbert.
That happened on Friday. China is making fresh threats now. China Daily is a leading Chinese newspaper. It is owned by the Communist Party. China Daily has published a new piece on the Taiwan situation. Here it is. It accuses politicians in the US of playing risky games with Taiwan. There is a warning that comes with this article. It says, if Washington takes things too far, there could be a war between the US and China. I repeat, there could be a war between the US and China. That's what the article says. Sounds a bit extreme, doesn't it, to say the least? That's because it is supposed to. Next month, the Communist Party will meet for its 20th Congress in Beijing. And during that event, Xi Jinping is expected to secure a historic third term. The extension will put him on par with Mao Zedong, the father of modern-day China. Now just think about this. Just before this historic moment, would Xi like to appear weak on the issue of Taiwan? Certainly not. But Xi Jinping's belligerence is now putting China on the path towards a dangerous escalation, where even one mistake can prove to be very costly. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.